Okay, but welcome to episode 4, I believe we're in, of Pillow Talk. Now, it may seem very dark and gloomy and cold. You can't tell it's cold, but it is actually cold, which is entirely appropriate because I'm reading from Lynn Martel's book, Tales and Trails, Adventures for Everyone in the Canadian Rockies. And I mean, who would read something by Lynn Martel if you weren't in a weird place, right? Because she goes to all these amazing places, mountains, skiing, backcountry stuff. And the chapter I'm going to read to you is from an adventure she had in a cave. So I thought, A, this was quite cave-like, but B, the actual reason I'm doing it live outside is because I'm true to my word. I said I'd do this 100 days in a row. And Fabio fell asleep before I had a chance to start. And I didn't want to wake him up, so I just stepped outside here to do this, because I'm also quite thoughtful, Oh my God. Anyway, then I had to find a space that was, dark, but not too dark so I could still read. Anyway, here we go. This is from Lynn Martel's book, chapter 4. And I'm not sure how long my battery's going to last out here in the frosty night air. So if I disappear, that's why. You get what you get. And thanks for joining me. And here we begin. I am crawling on hands and knees on a lumpy brown dirt floor. At least my headlamp beam makes it appear brown. The uneven surface is littered with rocks and boulders, everything smothered in a fine dust that permeates the cool air. The floor, the boulders that restrict and channel my course of travel, the walls, the low vaulted stone ceiling. I'm grateful for my knee pads and for my helmet. I'm so absorbed by the floor that I don't look ahead often enough to avoid collision with the irregular ceiling. Not that I would see much anyway. My surroundings are limited to whatever is illuminated by the narrow beam of light. Rounding a bend, I lose sight of my companions. For a very long minute, I can't even hear them. Just as space is obscured to me, so is time. I have no sense of the hour, the day, of the week, what season it might be outside, above my underground environs. Even through rubber-palmed gloves, the ground feels cold and clammy as I weave around small puddles like an oversized toddler. Eventually, I rejoin the group, their light beams illuminating the shadowy, otherworldly cavern. Spurred by the simple impulse of human curiosity, in 1883, 3 railway laborers stumbled upon a cave that contained a pool of naturally warm sulfur water carved inside the lower slopes of Sulphur Mountain at the edge of Banff town site. Thinking they'd hit the mother lode that would bring them fame and especially fortune as the proprietors of a deluxe bathing resort, Frank McCabe and brothers William and Tom McCardle filed a claim in an attempt to acquire the land the springs bubbled within. Their plans were thwarted, however, as Canada's government and the Canadian Pacific Railway had already begun to conceive designating the spectacular landscape of the area as a protected place that would draw lucrative tourist traffic, Western settlement, and valuable prestige on the international stage for the still young country. Arguments over the ownership of the Banff Hot Springs escalated into a legal battle, which the Government of Canada eventually settled in 1885 by declaring that the coveted springs would belong to all Canadians as the country's first and North America's second, after Yellowstone, national park. Today's modern cavers or spelunkers are as curious as ever. Spurred by their sense of adventure with few entrepreneurial designs, they employ safe rope and travel techniques to explore the underground as enthusiastically as weekend rock climbers. While very real dangers do exist, serious accidents... I'm getting low battery warning signs here, so as I say the chapter, run out and buy a copy of the book yourself. Check it out from your local library. And farewell and thank you for joining me, but I'm going to continue until my battery dies. I'd already experienced an adventure-filled summer, including an especially memorable climb of Mount Tupper in BC's Glacier National Park, which had forced me to overcome my fear on the scariest exposed cliff sections I've ever peered down from. Still, I felt ready for a new challenge. Following our Canmore Caverns guide, Eli, I joined a rat's nest cave tour with 6 others. Hiking along the half-hour approach trail near my hometown of Canmore, I listened as 2 new acquaintances, Ryan and Angelina, a lively pair of late 20-somethings, I lost my place there. It's dark. Sorry. I described their recent skydiving experience. Although I'm adventurous by some standards, I realized I'm not the thrill-seeking type. My adventures are motivated by a desire to explore fascinating wilderness landscapes. Caving, I would discover, reveals entirely different dimensions of landscapes. One moment, I'm shifting to lower power mode. Let's see if I can still broadcast. I haven't lost you yet. Hi, Katrin. Yes, so caving, I would discover, reveals entirely different dimensions of landscapes. As we donned our tour-supplied coveralls, climbing harnesses, knee pads, and miner's lamp-equipped helmets, Eli described how the Pleistocene glaciations of the past 1.6 million years caused meltwater to carve out the 4-kilometer-long Rat's Nest cave system in the soft limestone. With a constant air temperature of 4.5 degrees Celsius and descending to 245 meters, that's about 804 feet, below its entrance, Canada's 11th longest cave of 100 caves stretching more than 440 meters each, is also the Canadian Rockies' warmest cave. Right about now, it's probably warmer than I am, actually. Halfway along our hike, Eli had stopped. We're standing 30 meters above the cave's largest room, the Grand Gallery, he said. How do you map a cave? I asked. Compass and a measuring tape, he replied. Stepping through the creaky access gate, Eli gave us the cave rules. Keep your head low, don't try to move too quickly, and don't leave anything behind. In the entrance, he pointed out ancient red pictographs on the wall and then gestured toward a dark, bottomless hole. The Bone Bed Pit contains artifacts including 3,000-year-old arrowheads, likely left behind by Aboriginal peoples seeking shelter in the entranceway. To preserve this important site, rope-equipped souvenir seekers in 1889. Oh my goodness! To preserve that all again. Oh, the joys of being live and freezing. Okay, to preserve this important paleontological site from rope-equipped souvenir seekers, in 1987, 1 square mile around the entrance was designated a provincial historic site, complete with locked access gates. Stooping and lurching deeper into the cave, Eli demonstrated how to clip ourselves into the safety rope as we slid down a smooth, polished rock ramp into the next chamber. Regrouping in a classroom-sized space, he pointed to another hole in the floor, telling us we'd exit the cave through there later. It looked pretty darned small. As we moved to the next section, the roof began slanting lower and lower until we stopped, wedged on our sides in a passage barely a meter, about 3 feet, at its highest. After clipping himself into a climbing anchor permanently bolted into the rock, Eli supervised us as one by one we clipped into the double safety rope system to rappel down into a 20-meter vertical abyss. Relieved to be released from my cramped position, at my turn, I eagerly lowered myself into the industrial elevator-sized pit walled with moist, slick rock. With everyone down the well hole, we reached our first optional small squeeze, which is caving lingo for a small, constricted space. It's more fun if you go head first, Eli suggested. Head first, you say? Okay, chirped Angelina, already slithering on her belly through a passage at floor level just high enough to swallow her head, torso, legs, and finally her feet. Not quite head first, I wriggled my way through the crawl space sideways, employing a crab-like maneuver that got me onto a shelf that dropped under my left leg like a staircase step. I felt grateful for years of yoga classes. Entering the 5-way chamber, Eli suggested we all remember this room, since it was the only access to the cave exit. One has to hope nothing happens to Eli on these expeditions. As he said this, I realized we were immersed in a labyrinth with countless dead ends and few clues for the untrained eye to landmark. My perception was distorted. Distance was difficult to judge. I was certain my boots would soar appeared steeper than it actually was. With no plants, no wind, no sky, and no horizon, the world was reduced to what appeared directly in front of our light bulbs. And then we reached the laundry chute. This is our next optional squeeze, Eli announced. Anyone who didn't feel comfortable would wait at that spot for 15 minutes until the group looped back up, Eli suggested. He described a body-sized vertical tube that dropped for 3 meters and then dog-legged into a 45-degree, equally snug 6-meter tunnel before opening into the next standable room. 30 feet in 30 seconds, Eli grinned with a wink. I'm sure you'll all fit. While the others jostled to go first, I wondered why I couldn't be the kind of person content to seek out simple, fun, rather than, good grief, this is an uncomfortable challenge fun. Determined not to be left alone, I settled midway into the queue with giant butterflies lurching in my gut. Sidling up to the hole, Aram dropped one leg down, followed by the other, with his arms stretched, reaching one above and one below him. He inched his body down into a space so constricted I could not see beyond him as he was swallowed by the earth. My turn. While I rationally understood I could be free of the squeeze in less than a minute, and that hundreds of cavers much larger than my size 6 body had previously fit through, I battled my imagination. Unlike negotiating some alpine terrain where a mistake would guarantee a death fall, I recognized the hazards of this challenge existed largely in my mind. I knew I must banish all thoughts of things beyond my control, mainly the the very small, tiny possibility of an earth tremor. The only thing that would realistically, on this guided tour, trap me to suffer an unthinkable fate. Grateful for my athletic strengths, I soon realized I was even more thankful for how 20 years of outdoor challenges had prepared me for the mental control this situation demanded. I lowered myself into the shaft at times so tight I was forced to turn my head. Forced to turn my head sideways to make space for the headlamp protruding from it. I moved a lot by feel, since I was rarely able to see my next footstep. For a brief moment, the passage opened large enough for me to sit, and then I shimmied into the chute section, quickly experiencing the wedgie Eli had promised. Following voices ahead of me, I slithered down to a fork in the human-diameter pipe, fortunately remembering Eli's instructions to stay left and not be suckered into the large-ended funnel tube on my right, where my worst fears of becoming trapped would soon be realized. Bumping and sliding one foot, then my butt, one shoulder, then the other arm, I couldn't move fast enough in a place where fast wasn't an option, as I focused on staying ahead of thoughts I did not want to entertain. Finally free, my chicken in a foreign environment voice in my head was adamant that I never had to make myself do that again. My cocky, adventurous voice in my head, however, expressed excited congratulations. Walking erect through the next passage, Eli described a section deeper into the cave that remained as tight as the laundry chute for an hour and a half. Still babbling with anxiety, I had to ask, head or feet first? I'm going to leave it there because we're running a little bit long this evening, and because it's cold out here and because my battery's dying. But thank you so much for joining me. That book, in case you missed the intro, was Tales and Trails, Lynn Martel, Adventures for Everyone in the Canadian Rockies. And it is chock full of not only her adventures and stories, but also information if you should want to do something like, descend into the laundry chute with Eli. She's got lots of instructions in here about how to find places to hike and ski and go spelunking and many other adventures beside. It's a wonderful collection of local lore, history, interviews, and her personal take on what makes it so great to be here in the mountains and enjoy all that this wild and wonderful place has to offer us. Okay, and on that happy note, we survived our caving adventure. I will see you all tomorrow. Good night, sleep tight, and tune in tomorrow for another episode of Pillow Talk. My fingers are actually so cold, they are not operating the buttons. Forgive me while I stab at my phone.